Hello, my fellow Immersioneers, and welcome to a brand new duo companion immersive honor mode run of Baldur's Gate 3. In this duo companion run, we'll be taking a single companion and exploring their story in detail together with our custom character. They will form, a deep bond with each other and battle through the quest of getting rid or embracing the tadpole, hopefully all the way to the end this time. This will be an immersive run, as always. For those who are new to the channel, maybe with this series, this means that we will have some background to our character, and we will aim to maintain, in fact, we will maintain a coherent narrative for our character background and character choices. The companion will likewise fit into that narrative. It will also mean that mechanically we will not be min-maxing necessarily, although we will be playing smart. Right? But we will not be min-maxing, we will not be exploiting the game in any way, not even cheesing the game. We will not be, using barrels or stacking barrels to get through difficult encounters, anything like that. We will not be anticipating or preparing for events, that we know will come up. So any surprise situation, we will have to just walk in there with, as we are. Any boss fights we're going to take on, almost as though the character runs into them for the first time, in their lifetime. This will also be an honor mode run, and this will be a strict honor mode run with no kind of replays. I know I've tried that before, but I'm just exploring the concept for this kind of types of series in the channel, so we allowed ourselves that before. But as kind of 2/3 of you voted following the end of the Gith run, we should stick to strict honor mode, and I completely agree, as I've explored in the Rest in Peace video for that run. This is exactly what makes these runs so interesting. And makes future runs interesting too. And so kind of breaking that undermines pretty much the whole concept of immersive honor mode runs. With that said, I will just briefly say that the companion we'll be taking with us this time, and whose story we will be exploring, is Minthara, my personal favorite character in terms of how well, like, the voice acting, the looks, and the character itself just fit with what she says. I just love it. I love Minthara. Now, obviously, those of you who have played through the game even a little bit will know that she's not recruitable in Act 1. And I like that. I like that because we will have some interactions with her in Act 1. But building on my experience in the previous runs, in the Rogue and the Gith run, we will be taking on Act 1 solo, right? I think that will be a challenge for me and interesting for you guys to watch, exploring this, the game with me in a completely different way. Minthara is also clearly, pretty evil character, or, I think she's a very complex character, and I like it. I think our custom character, you'll see in a second, also has a bit of that conflict as well. But this will be, largely kind of, an evil, nefarious type run. And so we will see a lot of the dialogue and interactions in Act 1 from a completely different perspective versus what you guys seen on my channel before. Obviously, maybe some of you have already played this, but nevertheless, I think you will find it interesting. So, before we proceed, just a quick disclaimer that this episode, as in previous runs, will be just a pure character creation, lore, and character background episode. We'll also watch all the cinematics, and then when we land on the Nautiloid or get out of our pod, I will then stop this episode there, and the second episode will start from that point on. Therefore, if you're not into kind of spending, I'll probably try to spend 30-40 minutes in character creation here. If you're not into that thing and you just rather see or hear the summary, you just go ahead and skip to episode 2. I'll probably post these concurrently or in very short order. So go ahead and skip to that episode 2 and get the summary there. With that said, maybe I'll just ask that if you do enjoy these series, do consider giving them a like, just to, at least for the first kind of 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes, just to get the series kind of spread out. It does help with the algorithm. But from then on, I want to ask, because I think everyone who wants to be on this journey is probably already on it. But for the first few episodes, if you can give it a like, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into a brand new game, honor mode run, and let's get into the cinematic yet again, guys, and then we'll go over the background for our character, the class, and how he fits into this story. I am beyond excited for this one, guys. Indeed. Who are we, guys? And here we are. So for our custom character this time, I'm going to quickly just create the character and create the looks, and I will start explaining as to what we're going to be. So just at a high level, we're going to be a half-orc, we're going to go rogue, we're going to be an assassin, we're going to be an urchin, we're going to be male, we're going to edit. And
what was that?
The story of the character is that he was left, or maybe probably abandoned by his parents. Maybe he was, you know, I mean, he's clearly a mix. I mean, actually, half-orcs, we'll see in the lore a little bit in a second, but half-orcs can be born of two half-orcs, or a half-orc and a human, or an orc and a human. So perhaps this was the case of, you know, maybe orcs raiding a village somewhere on the outskirts. And you know, I guess what you can happen in medieval type raid. Maybe his mother worked in, you know, a brothel in Baldur's Gate, a brothel rather, something like that. And sort of half-orc came in there, but this was, you know, sort of, he was unwanted, I guess, child, very sad, and so he was just abandoned as a kid and survived as an urchin on the streets of Baldur's Gate, obviously through stealth and kind of sleight of hand. Do these things at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, that's our character. Yeah. And so, yeah, so after surviving a poor and bleak childhood, you know how to make the most out of very little, using your street smarts bolsters your spirit for the journey ahead. And so as he grew up, you know, he was sort of downtrodden, abused, kind of constantly pushed around, never had a home. And as an urchin on the streets of Baldur's Gate, he grew up and graduated first into crime, kind of low-level crime, just stealing, you know, mostly, you know, for survival. He never had any friends, no one ever gave anything to him, never went to school or anything like that. You know, he's graduated from the sort of the school of life, the school of the streets of Baldur's Gate. But and that was kind of his probably teen years. And then as he grew up into this massive half-orc, then obviously, you know, his muscle and overall physique helped him survive and become this sort of warrior assassin, sword for hire. So he's very much a loner, not really accepted by anyone, and never had any kind of friends, no one to trust, no one to rely on, and hence he withdrew, you know, deep within himself. And he's that kind of like brooding, sort of silent type character who's just lost faith in kind of humanity and anyone else. He knows that there's only one person he can rely on, and that's himself. He knows that, people will pay to kill their, rivals, family, sometimes rivals, sometimes family members, former business partners, lovers, etc. He's just kind of detached from all of that, and he just collects coin, makes sort of that risk-reward assessment, and just tries to survive by whatever means he can. Whoever pays, that's who he works for. That's kind of the very high level description of the character. Now let's go ahead back up to the top, and we'll go to Half-Orc, and we'll just get a bit of lore on the Half-Orcs, and you will understand why I think this fits perfectly with this sort of background for a character. So in terms of BG3's own paragraph of lore, it says here, half-orcs are creatures of intense emotion. Half-orcs are more inclined to act than contemplate. Whether the rage burning their bodies compels them to fight, or the love filling their hearts inspires acts of incredible kindness. For our character, I think that passion has been so suppressed, and he kind of directed that within. And so he's very set in his beliefs. He's good at his craft, good at what he does. So he's passionate about that, but he doesn't show any of that emotion, maybe until he meets, a companion, that one person in the world who he forms a deep bond with. But until that day, he is very much kind of within himself. That's the type of character he is. And Half-Orcs, reading from the fandom page generally, so just kind of if you're wondering where did Half-Orcs even come from. So there isn't a lot of lore on Half-Orcs, but it's quite interesting, and it is exactly kind of how I imagine, and you'll see how it fits with our character. So broadly speaking, in terms of their history, Half-Orcs, it says here, have existed in the world for many, many centuries. Although, like most half-breeds, they've never had an independent cultural history. Half-Orcs of historical note have made their impact not through a civilization of their own, but by excelling at whatever path they've taken within another people's culture. So they're not really particularly welcome, you could say here. Half-orcs often have poor relations with other races, in particular the elves and the dwarves, due to mutual racial enmity. Halflings and gnomes are also typically distrusting of half-orcs, although not to the degree of dwarves or elves. Even among their human brethren, half-orcs are generally distrusted and feared. Half-orcs react to this distrust in a number of ways. Some half-orcs fall into introverted behavior, trying to attract as little attention to themselves as possible in a manner paradoxical to the image of boisterous barbarian half-orcs typically evoke. Others have tried their hardest to do good unto others, whether out of sincere charity or simply a desire for approval and acceptance. Some half-orcs have taken neither approach, accepting who they are, and instead will give others no choice but to accept them or leave. The troubles that their heritage has brought them teaches most half-orcs to be mistrusting and suspicious. Some half-orcs had as much trouble forming bonds with others as other races have had accepting them, making friends with great difficulty and losing them with much greater ease. So you can see here, obviously, because of their nature, they don't really fit anywhere. They don't really fit with orcs, and we'll see that in a second. Not with humans. They have lots of prejudice against them. They don't have a cultural home, so there's nowhere to go to for them to live among their kind. So they're kind of very dispersed, always finding themselves at the lowest rung of society. And I think it's just kind of a bit of a chance. Maybe if he was abandoned not on the streets of Baldur's Gate, or maybe the little baby found his way in some monastery, maybe he could become a paladin, right? Trying to prove himself that he's actually a good person. Maybe he could have become a cleric if some religious establishment took care of him. But our character, I guess, was not of that ilk. Maybe he was in a monastery. Maybe he ran away after. Or maybe he was a paladin. He will be kind of an assassin, or sort of like a fighter type character. But, this is not the way his life panned out. His life panned out that he descended into violence, graduated into thievery, from necessity, and then probably from, probably finding that he's actually quite good at it. And then later on, as he grew up, that, obviously that physique, obviously that's where it plays into in becoming that sort of like assassin warrior, taking what he wants. I think he realized that probably as he grew up. Now, they have no homeland, so again, there's a few settlements apparently in Faerun where, that kind of inhabited by half-orcs, but they never really made a home anywhere. You see here, in most cultures, half-orcs suffer prejudice. Within the lands of their human ancestors, half-orcs are commonly seen as average thugs and looked down upon. As a result, most half-orcs in human society are forced in menial labor or violence for a career. Some choose to take on a life of an adventurer, trying to get wealth and power that way. Within orc society, at the same time, half-orcs are often looked down upon as weaker and inferior creatures, but overall they tend to fare better. Most orcs grudgingly acknowledge the superiority of half-orcs' intellect as well as their comparable strength. As a result, it was not entirely unusual for half-orcs raised among orcs to rise to a position of power within that tribe. So they are maybe not, intelligent. They don't necessarily attend, educational establishments, but they have those wits, the senses, the kind of the street smarts. Again, that's kind of all of that plays into that urchin character, actually making his way through childhood into something, and surviving on his own. Interestingly, in terms of their biology, I guess pretty much last piece here, so half-orcs have shorter lifespans than humans, reaching maturity slightly earlier and rarely living longer than 75 years. And that's pretty much all of the lore. I mean, otherwise, they're just generally kind of taller, and you can see the model for half-orcs in Baldur's Gate 3 is that taller model. I think that will play in quite nicely in that romance with Minthara as well, because Drow generally they are kind of matriarchal society, and I think they kind of look down on their male Drows, mostly using them apparently, I think, as sex slaves. And so, for Minthara, for that really, really strong, ambitious character, it's going to take a big man with a lot of kind of that power, skill, and that decisiveness, ruthlessness to really kind of win her over, right? And that's exactly what our character represents. Very much in the same vein of Minthara. I mean, she's a noble, but she is very much a survivor, and so is our character. So I think that kind of kindred spirit in that sense. Lastly, it's probably because of that kind of abusive, kind of abandoned type upbringing, our character, will be drawn to that absolute that, no one, I think no human, or I guess half-orc, really ever lose that sense of need for belonging somewhere, somewhere where they can feel safe, someone who can give them shelter and power. And perhaps the absolute will be, it will be that source, right? But you can imagine how a person like this would drift, even though he's now kind of withdrew deep within himself. But when he was younger, he did drift towards those gangs, sort of naturally, right? Who probably promised him that sense of brotherhood, etc. That has been betrayed probably once or twice, and definitely one time too many for this character. And he then kind of went on this loner half-orc assassin sort of journey. But something like a evil god absolute that could still kind of wake up that sense of, okay, maybe this is the place where I belong. Maybe this is where someone will recognize me and give me that power. And security and just shelter and that companionship and whatnot. So that's pretty much it for the lore of the character. Now, what does half-orc actually give us? So we get 9 meters of racial speed. We do get dark vision, so we can see in the dark up to 12 meters, and that's what we need. So we're not going to be, I guess the idea, this is going to be a rogue, it's going to be an assassin, and therefore it's going to be a melee type rogue. We are going to build it, we're not going to take 12 levels of assassin, so we're going to mix it up with fighter, and this is going to be a type of assassin that goes in, gets that alpha strike, but still has that staying power afterwards to actually, fight. And that again plays into half-orc, that massive body. You don't really imagine this as a sort of like a gnome or halfling type assassin that just goes in, hits the target, and then runs out. This guy kind of goes in, hits the target, but hits maybe some guards. That's probably kind of the kind of jobs he takes. He can take out several men or gang or group, and he's very much a fighter, the assassin and fighter, has that staying power on the battlefield. That's the kind of assassin he is, which again fits the half-orc, and hence that dark vision of 12 meters will help him a lot, right? So he's not a ranged character. We don't get the 24 meters, but he sees everything that's close enough, and that's where his targets are. So very useful for us. Plays very well with the character, I think, with the background and with the race. We get relentless endurance, right? If you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming down. works. I mean, obviously fits honor mode very well, but also fits our character. He's that indomitable survivor spirit, right? He doesn't go down easy. He's been, yeah, I'm sure he's used this many times in his life. That's how he ended up where he is now. Probably, you know, in his youth, in those gangs, during some of those assassin jobs. You know, they did go south, but he always got back up, you know, and finished the job and then got out safely. So again, I think fits really, really well thematically with the character. Obviously, great help in honor mode. We also get savage attacks with Half-Orcs. When you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you deal an extra dice of weapon damage. We'll explore how this works in the game, but I think it's very clear. Basically, our crits do even more damage than usual because we get not... we don't roll double. Actually, we do roll double the dice as all other characters, but we also get one additional dice of the weapon. So if we're holding a 1d6 weapon, we'll roll an additional 1d6. So yes, this does work better with, you know, a two-handed weapon where you roll a 1d12 or at least a 1d10, right? But we will be dual wielding. I will explain why. I think thematically it fits, but it's also the way assassin is really kind of how you maximize the value of the assassin. And so we will also be focusing on crits, not exclusively, but it will be definitely a good chunk of the build. So assassin gets some guaranteed crits. There will be other ways to get guaranteed crits, so we will make use of this extensively. You know, this will be beneficial. It's that little boost. It's not OP, but it is a good boost. And again, fits with the character, with that sort of assassin with staying power, a fighter assassin. You know, when he hits, you know, he hits hard. He relies on stealth to sort of get in, but once you know the shit hits the fan, you know, he's there. He can fight off 2, 3, 4, 5 enemies all by himself. He's kind of this solo unit machine. So for our class, we're going to get rogues. So here with stealth, skill, and uncanny reflexes, rogues' versatility lets them get the upper hand in almost any situation. Again, that's exactly how he grew up, how he survived, how he found himself to be where he is now. This is also, by the way, this for you know, I like to tie in, you know, why this character goes solo or will only accept one companion. Well, it's because of the backstory to Half-Orcs and the backstory to the character. Hence, you know, we can't accept like Astarion, Gale, Lae'zel. None of those are really, you know, you wouldn't. He's spent all his life on his own. It would take, you know, a very strong character and a very special bond and a kindred spirit to really make him accept that companion into his party and find, you know, yet again, you know, after having his trust broken so many times in his life, put his trust into another companion. And I think Minthara fits that perfectly. You know, I didn't want to do, again, the kind of same race. I also think the Drow and Drow doesn't really work because of the way the Drow society is structured. So I thought this was a great way to involve Minthara. I think our character, again, we'll explore him further as we level up, you know, and just go through the game. But he's exactly the type of man that Minthara would look up to. And they share a lot of that conflict inside of them as well. So, yeah, super excited. This is the reason our character is solo. Now again, urchin background. Again, after surviving a poor and bleak childhood, you know how to make the most out of very little. Using your street smarts bolsters your spirit for the journey ahead. Again, fits us perfectly. Gives us proficiencies in sleight of hand and stealth. Very important for assassin. Stealth, right? We want to get in through that sight, so the vision cone sometimes. Because we do not have access to minor illusion. There are ways to get it, but I don't want to, like, I didn't want to detract from the theme. It's too costly to multi-class into, you know, there's a bunch of different classes that can give you minor illusion. So instead, we'll rely on stealth to really position ourselves, get in there, and it's very important, in fact, paramount for the assassin to get that jump on the enemies. So stealth is key. Also, thematically, this is how, again, our character survived his childhood, kind of early years. Sleight of hand, again, fits with the character, but also will help us to save gold by robbing merchants of, you know, little things like potions and arrows. Those things, we don't really want to pay for those, we'll just kind of grab them. Big things like items, you know, they're very hard to steal, and yeah, as we level up, it may be possible, but, you know, we don't want to steal from, you know, from the Githyanki Crescent where we're surrounded by Githyanki. We're smarter than that. But little items here and there, you know, no one will even notice, right? And that's how we're going to get by, again, fits the honor mode run, because we will need money for good items, and we'll need a lot of money. And we will need a lot of these extra items, like healing potions and whatnot. So again, fits, I think, perfectly with that survivor ethos and that solo honor mode run, at least for the first act. I think that fits it perfectly. In terms of abilities, let's go over that. So let's clear everything. I'm going to clear all the proficiencies even as well. And let's start here. So first of all, strength. We're gonna go with 10. We don't need it. But I don't want to debuff. I also think that, if you're playing a half-orc, you have to go 10, because one thing you immediately notice and know about them intuitively is that they're obviously very well physically built. Now, I did kind of struggle a little bit with, 10, but they are obviously super strong. But then I think the way to sort of sidestep that, or the way I've convinced myself thematically, is that, but this sort of size and that muscularity can be interpreted two ways. One could be like high strength, but it can also be interpreted as high constitution. And we're going to put that at 16, and we're going to put our dexterity at 17. And together, these sort of first three attributes, I would say they constitute kind of the bodybuild, the physical prowess, or like the build, right? That physical development of the character. And you can see we invested a lot of points here, and I'm fine with leaving strength at 10 for thematic reasons. He's basically very well built. I mean, dexterity, agility in real life also takes a lot of training. So does endurance and constitution. And so when someone looks massive like this, yeah, they're probably pretty strong, definitely not below average, but it could be that actually kind of their muscle and that constitution is what gives them that size and that bulk, rather than maybe that sort of pure strength and sort of pure physical power. So I think together that still fits it really well. And again, he is that type of assassin who is a fighter, right? He has staying power. Now, we have 7 points left, and we're putting all of those into wisdom. Why? Because this is senses and intuition, right? So thematically, he has low intelligence and low charisma, because charisma is a force of personality. It's that sort of ability to persuade, get the social cues from people. And, he's never educated. He never had any family, never had any real group of people, never had that opportunity to practice social skills as a child. And so, yeah, obviously his charisma is 8. Intelligence, likewise, memory and mental power. Now, he's no intellectual, that's for sure. Never went to school, and so, doesn't really have that raw mental power. He, as I said, graduated from the school of life, school of the streets, right? And so that's why I'm comfortable putting 8 points in intelligent charisma. I think that fits the character. That also obviously I always like to combine the needs of the honor mode, or the imperatives, with the theme, and I think this does fit thematically. But in terms of putting all our points into wisdom, he has those senses and intuition. That's what he relies on, rather than brains or reading social cues. He just kind of intuitively knows, gets that Spider-Man sense of what's is there danger, is there not, is he being lied to, is he being swindled, is he being set up, is there an ambush in place? He kind of just sees all of that. And hence that 14 wisdom, and he's got life experience plenty, right? Again, that school of life, the wisdom, right? The sort of things you can't really put your finger on, can't really describe, but they're just there. And hence 14. Obviously, thematically, wisdom is a very common saving throw. A lot of proficiencies in skills depend on wisdom, and therefore having the +2 there is very important and very beneficial for an honor mode run. Now, to supplement these ability points, let's look at our proficiencies. So first of all, we're going to put 1 proficiency into acrobatics. Well, actually, no way. So first of all, we get, from background, we get stealth and sleight of hand. That's +2 proficiency and +3 from dexterity. Sorry, let's take a step back, because I did kind of skip over dexterity constitution. Dexterity will obviously, we have a proficiency save in it. It's obviously going to give us that +3 initiative, +3 to armor class, because we only have access to light armor, at least at the start. But even generally, it's the light armor that gives you, sometimes gives you plus a little bit to stealth, right? Which is very welcome again, we're not going to be basing this run on stealth, but it is useful. Sometimes, you know, it's key. So yeah, so that 17 dex, that sort of, you know, shows you that character. He's nimble, he's agile, he will use finesse weapons for that sneak attack, right? And just generally, that's the kind of half-orc he is. He's more of like that, I don't know, kind of the gymnast calisthenics type strength rather than pure lift a lot of weights type of strength. So we get, yeah, +3 to initiative, +3 to AC, +3 to chance to hit, and +3 to damage with finesse weapons, which we have to use because of the sneak attack for the rogue. So this has to be a dexterity-based character. A little bit kind of contradictory, but that I already explained how this fits into the theme. I think it's fine in terms of, you know, half-orc being dexterous. I think that fits fine. Constitution-wise, again, we're going to be that massive guy, so it's an assassin with staying power, hence we invest into 16 points. +3 to saving throws for, you know, some spells and poisons and such. Fits together with that massive, bulky build of a half-orc. And generally just gives us, you know, we start with 11 HP as a rogue. That's pretty good, right? And we're going to need that HP, because again, we're going to get in there, make the alpha strike, but then, you know, we still have to finish the job if there are any stragglers around. Once we take out, you know, the strongest target of the group, maybe. So yeah, that's Constitution Dexterity. Now let's go ahead and here. Now, to kind of follow on that theme, we're going to invest 1 proficiency into Acrobatics. Keep your balance, land on your feet. Sorry, apologies. Land on your feet helps resist being shoved. So again, that physique, that build, that high dexterity, I think fits really well thematically into Acrobatics. And also just helps us. Yeah, we don't want to be shoved often. We do want that resistance. Enemies do shove quite frequently. We want to keep that opportunity attack and just stay on top of our targets. If they're shoving because they just want to disengage, right? If they're shoving us off a cliff, we also don't want to fall down, take damage, or even just die outright. So Acrobatics is one of our proficiencies. Sleight of hand and stealth we discussed. We will then take a proficiency in Insight and Perception. Now, Perception is observe your environment, spot hidden details, and Insight is read people and situations and detect lies. Both are wisdom driven, and so we already have a +2, but we have proficiency, so it'll be another +2 going up to +4 by the end of the game. This again to follow with that theme that yes, you know, we don't have high intelligence, nor do we have high charisma, but we are very observant of our environment because we are a rogue assassin with that urchin background, and we also read people well. You know, yes, you know, we haven't been trained in etiquette, we haven't had a good social group, but, you know, again, we know when we're being, you know, set up, or, you know, we get that kind of, that wit, that street smarts. I think that's what's reflected in this Insight and Perception proficiencies, and in fact, we're going to put our expertise in both of these, because, you know, nothing slips past our character. He notices everything. Hence, you know, again, he's that quiet, sort of brooding character. He doesn't say much. He's always observing, right? If you imagine, he's lived his life, this sort of solo assassin life in Baldur's Gate for a while, so he always needs to watch his back, right? Always needs to be aware of anywhere he goes, any whatever compound or house he enters where he has to eliminate a target. And even after that, you know, he knows he probably has enemies, right? So he needs to be on his toes all the time. Hyper aware, probably almost like PTSD type. And that leaves us with 1 proficiency. I'm going to put that in Deception. And we already have Intimidation, which is granted from race, because, yeah, look at this guy. I mean, yes, obviously he has a +1 to Intimidation. But we're going to put a point in Deception as well to counter that lack of charisma. Again, like, we don't have much of personality. Like, we don't know how to express ourselves maybe properly. But we have learned through necessity a little bit of deception. And so to kind of counter that -1 from charisma, we do get proficiency, so +2. I get +2, -1, obviously +1. This will grow as our character levels up a little bit. So, you know, when we have to, we will rely on Intimidation and Deception to pass some checks and some dialogue. You know, he is capable of social interactions, obviously, as that solo guy. Like, anyone would have to. But this is not his forte. But we do get a little bit of that. Also, I like the fact that, I mean, I feel it's kind of weird, to be honest, in D&D. I'm not really sure why this is the case, but rogues do get a proficiency in Intelligence and Dexterity. So we do have saving throw, you know, proficiency in saving throws to dexterity, that I get. But intelligence, I don't really get why it's intelligence. I kind of think it's wisdom. But at the same time, I think it's nice because you're able to invest little intelligence, but still get that saving throw boost. And I think that's also meant to reflect the fact that, yeah, rogues might not be very well learned, but they are smart. They are streetwise, right? They are, always on their toes. Like, you can't fool them easily. And I think that, again, gels very well with our character and our background. So with that said, guys, I think that's all I wanted to say for the character. Yeah, there's not a lot of lore, but it's still interesting lore, and I think we found a good way to tie this all together into a great character. Like, I'm really digging this. Again, I don't want to beat my own drum too much, but yeah, half-orc rogue. There's a little bit of that conflict. He's massive, but he's based on dexterity. He's got that constitution, and you'll see how he plays. I mean, this is the face. This is the last thing you guys see before he punches or puts your lights out. Pretty scary. This is a solo survivor guy, right? You don't mess with this. Very observant, very much like within himself. Like, you don't want to mess with this guy. This is the kind of guy who like sits in the corner in a tavern, and everyone just kind of like hushes when they walk by because they know who this guy is. And yeah, at the same time, there's probably a lot of depth to him. Like, he is not necessarily a bad guy. He just this is the way what life threw at him since he was a child. And you'll see, Minthara. I think that gels really well with her as well. I think she's quite a complex character. If you look, actually, just a little, I don't know, Easter egg, little tidbit. When I just started this channel, like, I don't know, almost like 2 years ago now, and BG3 just came out, and I first thought, I wouldn't post anything because it's oversaturated. But then I did do a playthrough, about 20 episodes as a drow male, and the idea was the same, that I would do a solo tactician run at the time, and then I would sort of bump into Minthara, and it would become a duo run. So I've had that idea for a very long time, and to be honest, it's only during that run that I actually realized you can recruit Minthara, and I kind of thought that, okay, maybe if I ever get there. But anyway, that run I eventually abandoned because we got news of on mode run as opposed to tactician run. And anyway, that was a long time ago. That series never actually got any traction. It got like 10 views, but at the time I had like 1 subscriber. But anyway, so for me, coming back to that is really interesting. But the point I was going to make is that I do know a little bit about Minthara. I do know she's a bit of that conflicted character. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting story. And I think this character also fits, Minthara. I do genuinely think that this is the type of character that Minthara could form a bond with, and they could, sort of understand each other without thinking, and would really sympathize and empathize with each other. So yeah. With that said, my timer shows me we're at 38 minutes, so let's go ahead and proceed. The name of our character will be Krusk. I feel like that's very orcish, and very kind of, very orcish and kind of assassin-esque. Now, for our guardian, I'm gonna actually make it a human because I couldn't really get any half-orc females to work properly. Why not to like look decent? But I did create a character here already. I did create a character beforehand. So this won't take long, guys. Sorry. So same dark hair, and the thinking here is, I don't know who the Guardian actually is. As you know, I've only ever gotten to Merkel at the end of Act 2. I have a slight suspicion that a Guardian may be presenting themselves as a character that our custom character would sort of like be, trust them. But I have a little suspicion that they could betray us in the end, or maybe there is some sort of like they're not who they seem, and so they picked an appearance as someone who our custom character would sort of tend to trust. And I think in our case it would be maybe like a motherly figure for our urchin rogue, who I feel like this face looks a little bit like Half-Orc. If you look at Half-Orc faces, they have that jawline and sort of tusks. But but I felt like this face looks a little bit half-orcish, but human. And so maybe, you know, our Krusk character was sort of long in his sort of deep subconscious or in his private thoughts for a motherly figure looking kind of like this, hence the dark hair as well. Anyway, I think we're ready to venture forth, guys. I think I've spoken enough. We're at 40 minutes, so let's go ahead and watch the second cinematic. We'll get out of our pod, and then we can break the episode up here. That will be it for character creation and kind of lore and background setup. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments if you have any suggestions or any questions on the background of the character. I think it works really, really well. Again, don't want to beat my own drum too much, but I'm like really into this, really excited about this. I hope you are as well. I think this will be a good challenge, a good change of pace in terms of story and in terms of playstyle. For the assassin on its own is a different playstyle. Playing first act solo is a different playstyle. Playing kind of an evil run is a different playstyle. Good challenge, you know, a good preparation for that ultimate solo immersive auto mode run, which you know, I have 2 ideas for it that I think are actually workable. But yeah, so very, very interesting. I hope you're as excited about this as I am. Let's go ahead and venture forth. Alleyways that Krusk frequented, probably where he got abducted. Alright, guys. Here we are on a new journey. Alright guys, well let's, I think we're up to 45 minutes. Actually pretty short by my character creation and lore standards. But I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the setup. I hope you are excited about this. I should post episode 2 pretty much concurrently with this character creation episode. I will go over a summary there. So yeah, that's all there is to say. Give it a like again if you are excited for this. Help spread the series, help the channel, get more people into the immersion community, and we'll go from there. I hope you enjoyed this, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me. I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Bye for now.